Staying up late watching the Orioles do their thing out on the West Coast in Oakland, California. We did that on Monday night, as well as practices that begin at 8:30 each and every morning. Luke Jones wiping the sleep out of his eyes around the clock. Dude, I called you and I, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, like in the Toothpick episode. Remember that? They stayed up all night and danced. And, I would think by Thursday or Friday, it's going to be a little fatiguing around here for anybody who's an Oriole fan because these games are a little bit of a challenge now, aren't they?
They really are. I guess the one positive you can take from a 3-2 loss, where you don't really swing the bats well and you have a couple leadoff walks, was that came back to bite them. At least it was only 2.5 hours long. So at least
I was thinking the same thing. When it was over right around 12:30, I'm like, this is all I could ask for. If you're going to lose in 9 and lose quickly.
Right. If it's going to be a loss and no one's celebrating that aspect of it, don't make it a 3-hour, 45-minute endeavor where I'm up. I'm pushing 2 a.m. when I'm finally getting to bed.
I so remember that game back in the 12. The first year they were really good. That 18 inning. Yeah, the game was played at 5 o'clock in the morning. Was it Seattle or Oakland?
It was Seattle.
It was Seattle, right?
If you remember, that was the reason why they called up Dylan Bundy, because they needed another fresh arm in the bullpen.
That's why you're the Oriole historian, and that's why I pay attention to you.
Well, if I'm full disclosure, I wasn't awake for the end of that one.
I was. That's why I don't remember anything since. That's probably what the problem is.
But yeah, I mean, those are the types of games that'll really take a toll on you. But as far as the narrative on Monday night, I mean, Kevin Gausman, we've talked about it all year, the lack of run support. He certainly pitched well enough to win. He was certainly good enough to win. But it was a case where the offense, they couldn't scratch much across the plate against Kendall Graveman, who sinker ball pitcher. I know Buck Showalter talked about it before the outing, and he's someone who, if you looked at his ERA going into this one, you'd say, okay, not a very good pitcher, but his last start aside had pitched pretty well over the last 6 weeks or so, if you go back and look at the numbers. But lots of ground balls, and the Orioles, with the very few opportunities that they had, didn't really maximize them. They had the bases loaded situation where Machado hit a sacrifice fly to the first baseman. Got to love the Coliseum in that regard. But just the one run in that top of the third inning, and Machado hits a bomb late in the game, but just not enough, and you lose 3-2. And as I mentioned, a couple leadoff walks. Gausman issued one in the sixth inning, and you could really tell he was struggling with his control, and actually did a nice job to just only allow one run in that bottom of the sixth. And then Logan Andrusik comes in the seventh, issues a leadoff walk, and comes back to bite them again. So, that's kind of the narrative. As much as we talk about the lack of run support and not doing a whole lot against Kendall Graveman, 2 leadoff walks in consecutive innings, that'll come back to bite you. We talk about it all the time. You walk the leadoff guy, you're really setting yourself up for trouble, and that's what happened to the Orioles in the sixth and seventh, especially that third run in the seventh inning after Machado just crushed that one in the top of the eighth. That third run loomed large and ended up being the difference in the ballgame.
Luke, with Gausman, I didn't like him in the sixth inning, I didn't like him going 3-0 on batters, and I really didn't like they didn't have anybody warmed up. And I mean, I know Buck's baby in the bullpen, and and I sort of get that, but I felt like the game was so, and Buck's always thinking Chris Davis is going to hit a 3-run home run in the eighth, right? I mean, I think I'm thinking that. I mean, when they're losing by a run, they're losing by 2 runs, I'm like, they have enough offense that they're not a scratch-it-out kind of team after the seventh inning. If they've got 9 outs, 6 outs left, I'm not going to bet against them in a 1 or a 2-run game. That being said, I would have bet against Gausman in the sixth once he started to tire, because it looked to me like he was going off the edge of the cliff, and it was really the last couple of pitches that really kind of did him in, from giving up the run. It could have been a lot worse, right? I mean, when he came back to the dugout, you're like, all right, he escaped, it's a run, they're down a run. Okay, as I tweeted, they'll get the run back. Well, they did. They didn't get the third run back. We never questioned Buck and his magic approach with the bullpen and all that stuff, but this wasn't the best managed game from a bullpen perspective after the sixth inning, especially considering they didn't get any more runs after Machado home run.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's some merit to that. I think you do have to remember they don't have an off day until next Monday. So they're out on the West Coast. It's not as easy to get a fresh bullpen arm out there if you need to. Gausman's pitch count was very reasonable. I mean, he only ended up throwing 100 pitches total.
He was in the low 90s when he started to really tire.
And, he issued the walk to Stephen Vogt on, 5 pitches, I guess it was. But then he got Chris Davis and Valencia. Davis, he got out pretty quickly. Valencia, he fell behind 3-0, and Valencia flies out to right. So it looks like he's going to get out of it. But, I hear you. Could you make an argument they could have gone to him gone to a reliever to face Billy Butler? Sure, but then at the same time in the 6th inning, who are you really using at that point in time? I think it's pretty clear if you look at how Buck has handled Brad Brock over the last week to 10 days. They're trying to get him some rest. I don't know if there's necessarily an injury, but think about it. I mean, with O'Day missing 2 months of action, they really leaned heavily on Brad Brock. So I think it's a case where they're in a position where they're a little, I don't want to say shorthanded, but I think they're one bullpen arm shy of where they'd like to be, and a lot of that has to do with the Ubaldo Jimenez thing. They don't have a lefty specialist, and we saw that really come to fruition in the 7th inning when Stephen Vogt, when you look at his numbers against lefty pitching, that was a perfect situation to want to try to get him out, but instead they have Andrusic face him. But there's some merit to that. There's no doubt about it. And as you pointed out, I mean, it could have been a lot worse for Gausman in the 6th. But at the same time, it's not as though he was teetering and pitching really poorly in the 4th and 5th innings. I know he issued a walk to Crisp with 2 outs in the 5th, but it's not as though he was really pitching that poorly. But the command was certainly losing him in the 6th inning. So you can make that argument. Sure, I'll go along with that. But I didn't think it was a clear case where he left him in far too long. And even if he did, the results still ended up being, hey, I mean, you can't argue too much with a guy giving up 2 runs in 6 innings. I mean, a 3 ERA, that's good enough to win if your offense.
Unless your name's Gausman.
Yeah, I mean, if they even have a decent night at the plate, that should be more than enough to win. But I hear what you're saying.
How about Manny Machado getting the Teixeira treatment by the dozens left in Oakland on Monday night? It is funny, that the Donaldson fight has begat him massive booing, and all he did was muscle up and go like 465. Dude, that home run was like off the reservation. I mean, it's not garden variety when you're hitting 465-foot home runs.
He crushed it. I mean, that thing was clobbered, and I do find it funny that they still boo, and I get it that why they do. I mean, I think the Orioles fan base would certainly boo a player who threw a bat at someone. But it is
Machado's not going to be allowed in Toronto, Kansas City, Oakland. Who else has he fought with?
I know, right? Oh, there are a few guys that aren't allowed in Baltimore so much, but. But with Machado, I mean, it is funny considering Donaldson's not even there, even though Kendall Graveman was one of the big pieces that they picked up from Toronto in that trade. But, I mean, what do you say about Machado? We talked about this 3 home runs in the first 3 innings on Sunday and then hits another one on Monday. Had the sac fly to the first baseman in the 3rd inning that plated the Orioles' first run, one of those Coliseum foul ground kind of situations. But it's not something that's surprising at this point. I can remember him the last couple of years going back there since the incident against the A's in 14. It's been pretty ugly, but I don't think Manny seems to mind. I'll say that much. Certainly, based on his performance, certainly not.
Luke Jones joining us here. All things Orioles. Birds back after it this evening. Don't forget, the Thursday is an afternoon game. 4 games in Oakland, 3 games in San Francisco. I'm out in the Bay Area talking to lots of writers about the situation out there, and I guess the situation for the Orioles is they don't play as well on the road. They don't do little things as well. I mean, it goes back to, and I know we're going to have Brian Billick out of Greenmount Station on Tuesday night as well. And I've always asked him that question, why is the road so hard? But for this team, we don't have high expectations that somehow, they're going to go 5-2 out in the Bay Area or something. They just haven't played like that on the road, no matter who the competition is.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a nice series win in Chicago. Oakland, I mean, you look at the way they're scrambling with their pitching staff. I mean, they went into the day on Monday with a TBD on Wednesday and Thursday. I mean, they figured it out at this point in time. But this is a team that's clearly struggled. We talked so much about what they did at the trade deadline in 2014 and how they've just completely fallen apart since then. Now, they've made some really bad moves. I mean, the Josh Donaldson trade, as much I like Billy Beane. the Josh Donaldson trade, I mean, I still don't get that. That was not, in any way could you defend that being a smart move based on how the last couple of years have played out. But, in the Orioles case, you're right. They've struggled on the road. There's so many different theories. It's one thing to just expect a team to play really well at home and just not be quite as good on the road. I mean, that's commonplace. But at the same time, this is an Orioles team that's had the best home record in baseball for a large portion of the season, and they're 7 games under 500 on the road. As far as expectations, you hope they can go around 500 on this trip. And I'm not saying that that's something to be celebrated, but just based on what we know about this club, you go around 500 on this trip, chances are you're still, you're not going to fall out of the race in the AL East. They're tied for first place going into Tuesday night, but they got to find a way to just hold their own a little bit more on the road. They don't have to be great on the road. I mean, certainly you'd like to see that, but just realistically speaking, we've said it all along. If they can play a little closer to 500 on the road, this team's going to play well enough at home down the stretch that they're going to be in great position to, at least make the playoffs, if not win this division. But, they just, for whatever reason, I don't think it's shocking to think that they don't swing the bats as well on the road. But, the funny thing is, you would think, based on ballpark, that they would pitch a little bit better on the road. And I'm not talking recently, because recently they have pitched better overall. But, their pitching, they've had the same issues there. So it's something that, it's a comfort level thing. I think at times it probably gets into your head with a lot of clubs. When you don't play well on the road, you're thinking about the fact that you don't play well on the road, and you have a long time sitting in your hotel room until you report to the ballpark and get at it another day. So, it's something that they need to be able to play a little bit better on the road down the stretch. They're going to have to. Toronto's not going away. Boston, despite the fact that they haven't been all that good of late, they're not going away. So, you have a 3-team race, and you look at the road records for those teams. Toronto has been a winning team on the road. Red Sox have been what the Orioles need to be. They've been right around 500 on the road. So, it's been an ongoing narrative since the first few weeks of the season, and that really hasn't changed. And you think back to how they fared on the West Coast before the All-Star break, specifically in Seattle, and that's what you need to avoid. You can't have losing 4 in a row, losing 5 of 7 over this West Coast swing. They need to at least be able to fare a little bit better than that.
Well, they can't have a lost weekend out in San Francisco either. They're going to face a better team now. Obviously the Bruce Bochy situation, a guy I know pretty well, kind of a scary situation on Monday for him, and we'll get to that later on in the week, and I'm sure we'll see them. One thing that I've noticed myself doing just this week is I've started to legitimately scoreboard watch. Like, I honestly, at various points in the summer, didn't know where Toronto was playing or who the Red Sox were playing, and know who the Orioles were playing all the time. But I've started to pay attention to Encarnacion's 31st home run on Monday night, and that they're playing Tampa, and that the Red Sox are now entertaining, the Yankees, Columbus, AAA, Double A team
with A-Rod.
Yeah,
for a couple more days.
Yeah, doing the circus, in Boston for a couple days here. So I have noticed those other, for me, Toronto's on the come, obviously, and I don't know what's up with the Red Sox. I've always felt like they were the biggest threat, and I'm starting to not believe that, and maybe I'm getting lulled into it by a 2-game or a 3-game difference at this point, and there's still plenty of baseball left. But, boy, the Red Sox, if you're a Red Sox fan, this is a frustrating little gig for them right now, because to me, they have probably the most talent, but it's just not showing itself on the field yet.
Yeah, well, they have the most talented offense. The pitching, as much as they've done things to try to address it, I don't know if you saw David Price's start on Sunday night at Dodger Stadium. It wasn't very good. He just continues to be a disappointment.
It wasn't $217 million
right,
good, that's for
that's
sure.
The thing. It's one thing if you're pitching into some tough luck, and look, I talk about all the different, sabermetric stats, batting average for balls in play and peripheral stats. A lot of his peripheral stats don't look terrible, but the results, the run prevention hasn't been there for him. The Red Sox, to this point, a lot was made about the Pomerantz trade. That's been certainly a mixed bag at best so far. They have some other guys that haven't pitched well. There's just as great as their offense has been, there's just something that has just felt off about them for, and it hasn't been all along. I mean, they've had some stretches where they've played really, really well, but I don't know. There's just something about that team that, and you're right, they might be the most talented. They certainly are the best offense, but then you look at Toronto, and they have an offense that is certainly awoken after their first couple months of the season, where they had a couple injuries here and there, and they weren't really perforing at their top level.
But some of their guys like Tulowitzki just stunk early in the season.
Sure,
Batista stunk early in the season.
But the thing that's been consistent for them, even with all the talk about Sanchez as far as shutting him down, as far as his innings limit and everything, which they've kind of hedged, and they've said, well, okay, we're going to shut him down, and then they said we're not going to shut him down, then we're going to go 6-man rotation.
Well, the same thing could be said for Bundy here, except that Buck's not getting peppered because he's not surrounded by real reporters crushing him about it.
He's in fairness to the local reporters in town, he's been asked a lot about Bundy's innings limit.
But Boston and Toronto, the media there, it's very, very different. Here, no one's talking about Bundy's innings, but they will. 3 weeks from now, we'll be talking about Bundy's innings.
Yeah, but he's been asked about it constantly. He has. They're just not.
It's not a controversy here, though. It's not something people were talking about shutting down Bundy.
Well, I don't know about that. There's a lot of people talking about that.
Well, they just shut him on for crying out loud. He's only made 5 starts.
Well, but I'm just saying, lots of fans are talking about that. They're excited about how he's pitching, but everyone's asking, can he realistically pitch into September and October? So, we'll see how it plays out.
If he's pitching this well and he's okay, I don't know how they could realistically pull him out in a year when they can win the World Series.
But that's also a lot. They're going against a lot of conventional thinking. Even if that conventional thinking doesn't all have scientific proof based on it.
They went against conventional thinking when they hired Dan Duquette for crying out loud.
No doubt about it. But I guess going back to the AL East sizing it up. Toronto's pitched the best. Their starting rotation has been superior to the Orioles and the Red Sox, and their offense is slotted right between the Orioles and the Red Sox. They've scored more runs than the Orioles. They've scored fewer runs than the Red Sox, although they've narrowed that gap somewhat, I'd say. So at this point, on paper, I'd say the Blue Jays probably look like the team that has the best chance to win, but at the same time, we can keep talking about how flawed the Orioles are. Well, these less flawed these lesser teams as far as flaws go, they sure don't win a whole lot of games if they're so much better constructed than the Orioles. So, it's just funny how it all plays out, but we know the Orioles need to play better on the road. There's no question about that. I guess the one positive you're looking for is if you can hold your own through the rest of this week, then you get to a point where you're going to be playing more at home than on the road the rest of the way, and that's where the Orioles should really be able to take advantage.
All right, man. We got Miley and Neal late into the evening, Gallardo and Detweiler on Wednesday, Tillman and Triggs on Thursday. That's an afternoon game, and, of course, the Orioles swing over to the other side of the bay into San Francisco for the weekend. Luke Jones will be on the scene at Owings Mills all day long, sweating it out, and then this is a weird one, right? This is quickly done. They'll be off the field. They'll have a little downtime and get ready for a football game on Thursday night. These Thursday night games create some weird practices. It's sort of Friday already, right, in the football vernacular.
Yeah, and it's going to be a weird one anyway. John Harbaugh was asked again about Joe Flacco's status. He said they've made a decision. They're not telling anyone. I don't think Joe Flacco's going to play. I think Ronnie Stanley's issue, minor as it might be, but it could be enough to keep him out. He didn't practice on Monday. That would certainly make the decision even easier not to play Flacco. But I'm guessing they're probably not going to broadcast it because they don't want any more no-shows than they're already going to have on Thursday night because it's a preseason game in general. But
maybe people could bring their pets or something and fill up some of the seats.
Yeah, something like that. Some kind of minor league promotion or whatever. But right now this is a banged up football team. We've talked a lot about the guys like Suggs and Steve Smith and Doomerville not being on the field yet, Rashad Perriman, but they have quite a few guys that are just out with nagging injuries right now. From Dennis Pitta and Crockett Gilmore to Chris Moore, Michael Campanero's banged up again. Timmy Jernigan's just getting back to the practice field. He returned on Monday. Jimmy Smith has been a little banged up of late, although that was very minor, only missed one practice. But you just go down the list. They lost Max Williams and Daniel Brown to injuries on Monday, although neither is considered overly serious at this point in time. They're really hurting at the wide receiver and the tight end positions where these are positions we talked about them having such great depth. So It's just, that's what they're dealing with right now. A lot of nagging injuries, and in addition to the guys that they have on PUP. So as far as Thursday night, I don't expect Joe Flacco to play. I think it would be foolish to play him, quite frankly.
And what's the point? You're going to hand the ball off 3 times in one series?
I've looked back now. The last few preseason openers, he's played right around 14 plays. So he's played a little more than one series.
And sometimes it's been like stunning, right? Like sometimes it's been 14 plays in an 11-play, 81-yard drive for a touch. I mean, literally.
Right.
I've seen a lot of times. It feels like over the last decade where I've gone over there for these lousy games, but at least the first series ends with a touchdown pass to Dennis Pitta, and we all celebrate and say, okay, we can go home now, right?
Right. But again, I think they would be foolish to play Joe Flacco on Thursday night. There's just he's ahead of schedule in terms of there haven't been any setbacks. Monday was exactly 8 months since he underwent ACL reconstruction surgery. So he, in every regard, looks like he's to say that he's on track for the regular season opener is a Captain Obvious statement. He's barely missed any, he hasn't missed any reps in training camp practice.
He's a lot more on track than Suggs or Smith, right?
Yeah,
literally,
they haven't even given him a veteran day compared to some other guys. I thought that was very telling. On last Friday, they gave a slew of veterans a day off, and Joe Flacco wasn't one of them. So, I don't see what you have to gain from him being out on the field for a series or two on Thursday, especially if Ronnie Stanley's not going to be playing. So, hold him out, and probably on Thursday, you know what it's going to feel like? It's going to feel like a game late last year. Ryan Mallett playing. You're going to see a lot of guys playing that aren't going to be starters, aren't going to be a major part of what they do most likely in 2016. Now, you never know, but this is going to be it's a preseason game. Your main starters aren't going to see much more than a series or two anyway. But a lot of those starters are banged up as it is, so it's going to be interesting in that regard. But the one position I wrote about this, and I'll continue to talk about this as we count down the kickoff, really looking forward to seeing the running backs in action. Terrence West, so much said about him. Thomas Hammock, the running backs coach, said that no one's talked about it, but he thinks Buck Allen's had a really good camp, and Kenneth Dixon healthy. And you have Justin Forsett, who trying to hold off all these guys, all these young guys shooting for his job. So I'm not saying we're going to see Forsett extensively on Thursday, but he's someone who he's got to perform at least well enough to hold on to the starting job, because you do have some younger guys that are trying to make a name for themselves. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the running back position shakes out, and that's one position we figured to at least be able to see those guys in action, unlike some of those other positions where they're dealing with injury.
All right, Luke's going to towel off and get ready for another late night out in Oakland and a practice out at Owings Mills. Of course, you can always be reached Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke. I am Nasty at WNST.net, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, and, of course, Facebook Live and our WNSTV YouTube channel. Brian Billick on Tuesday night out of Greenmount Station for crab cakes and fun and Carroll County and some great football conversation and plenty of things on our agenda all week long, including Thursday night's football game and some late nights out in the Bay Area. We got you covered. The morning newspaper comes to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning. If you're not up late with the Orioles, it does lead with the box scores and standings and all the news that's fit to print. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but not least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will drive you home or drive you to the game, whatever direction you're heading for your tailgate for that always important first preseason game on Thursday night from 3 until 5. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.